Good afternoon, and welcome to Living in the Musical Moment, Percussion Madness, which inaugurates our jazz improvisation program for this season. I'm Francis Levy, and Ed Nurcesi and I are co-directors of the Philoctetes Center. I wanted to call your attention, as I have in the past few roundtables, to the art on the walls, which is part of an exhibit called The Body as Image, curated by Hallie Cohen with the assistance of Adam Ludwig. And it is a literal and figurative backdrop to our 6 panels on sexuality entitled Sextet. And so you'll see diverse, as you'll see in the program notes, diverse and perverse representations here, which reflect some of the themes that are being dealt with in these panels. I like to remind people that all Philoctetes events are simulcast, so that there are people watching now. And if you miss attending a roundtable and you're not able to see the simulcast, you can see all of our events by going to philoctetes.org and then going to archive. I'm now pleased to present Louis Porter. Louis Porter is a jazz pianist and professor of music at Rutgers University in Newark, where he directs the master's program in jazz history. He is known worldwide for his teaching and for his many books and articles, especially John Coltrane, His Life and Music. He has written numerous articles and liner notes and edits a book series and a scholarly journal. He has performed recently with such artists as Wycliffe Gordon, Ravi Coltrane, and Jane Ira Bloom. He performed in Europe in 2007 with Dave Liebman and others, and he is a member of the group Dharma Jazz with Badal Roy and Vic Uris. His latest CD, recorded live at Siena Jazz, is Italian Encounter Jazz Times. Italian Encounter. Jazz Times recently described Porter as a hell of a pianist. Louis Porter will moderate this afternoon's discussion and introduce our distinguished guest. Thank you, Louis.
Sounding beautiful, my friend. Yeah. Now, some of you who have been here before may have heard me say this before, but it's the honest truth. That is the first time we've ever played together. Right?
That's true.
Okay. I was waiting for him to say, what? No, it's the honest truth. First time we ever played together. So, the kind of thing we talk about here, Dave, is how were we able to do that? So I guess we should tell them the truth. We did have a little bit of discussion, right?
Yeah.
Just minimal. And by the way, the bio is on the sheet going around. Dave King's, in case you can't tell just by listening to him, he's a very famous drummer. He's the drummer in the Bad Plus, which is one of the hottest trios in jazz today. And he has a great jazz trio of his own, which is sax-based drums called Happy Apple. You should definitely catch them when they come to town. They're fantastic. And he plays in other bands as well, so I'm very pleased to have Dave King. That's preliminary because there's a lot more to come. See, there's a lot more to come. It's just just like a sampler, like kind of a sampler applause thing. But we just talked about a little bit. Really, it was just like a sentence. What did I tell you we were going to do for this first number?
Not much. Yeah.
I wasn't very helpful.
Yeah, you kind of said the sounds we'd be working with.
Yeah, right. I said I'll start free, and then we'll go into a beat where I'll have a flute sound.
Yeah.
That's basically what I told them. So for the free thing, I use this sound. Do you like that? I kind of like it.
Oh yeah.
And it's one of these sounds. See, people don't realize how sophisticated these synthesizers are these days. That it responds to your touch. So the same note can sound like this, or it's not just the same note louder. It's actually a different sound. So I was messing with that,
right. Mm-hmm.
And we kind of went into them. Then I switched to. I had the drum on for a second there.
Yeah, it was right in time with that.
It was right in time. It was perfect. But I didn't want to chance whether I could do that twice, so I turned it on. And that. That's my Neil Evans licks. You know his stuff? Yes. He's great at that. And this also responds to the touch. I've heard a lot of people play this and they don't get it because the whole idea is you can get the sound of the breath. You can go. But you have to use a real staccato. And then it really starts to sound like a flute, you know. And then every once in a while, of course, you want to do a long note. And if I had a third hand, I would have done this. So next time we'll get another person here, and I'll just every once in a while go move that. Yes, sir.
Idea before you, like when you're coming on your way over here, do you think? I mean, I'm a writer, so like
Okay.
in terms of words, but you say, well, okay, you start to get into the improv today. But do you think,
Wait, what did you call them? What did you call them? The Givens?
No, I did.
No, just now, your last sentence.
You talked about the initial notes that you.
Okay.
And how you came. But do you think of something? You say, I'm going. Do you put it into some sort of conceptual, verbal term, like the direction you think you're going to take it, independently of what Dave's doing? Say.
Need some water they have in the back there. Well, first of all, you said verbal. Now remember.
Verbalize in your head.
So remember, this is nonverbal.
That's what I'm asking.
It's a nonverbal. So I have a lot of stuff going in my head, but a lot of it is sounds. A lot of it sound. I did have sounds in my head because I knew what these sounds sound like, and I already had in mind I was going to use these sounds. So I did have sounds going in my head, but it's different from verbalizing. You see what I mean? And but so there's a couple of things I'll say about that, and then see what you can add to it. But one is that I always have I don't know about you, Dave, but I always have like piles of things that people have given me or that I've burned myself. All right, now the whole world knows it, but you know, that I want to hear, and I have them in my car. So I used to be on the way to gig, wow, I haven't heard this yet. And then I found when I got to the gig, I was kind of distracted. I wasn't really ready. So now I have a rule for myself, which is driving on the way to a gig. I don't listen to anything. Like even on the way to pick you up today, I didn't put anything on. And I find actually that what happens is ideas flood in. So I don't even have to I don't have to say, now I shall think about the first number. I'm just driving and I go, wow, I heard some of this stuff we just did, I did hear in my head.
But it's all music. It's all in terms of like music in your head.
Really it is. I mean, there will be words like, I'll use that sound called house, H-O-U-Z-E, which is that first one. And then I'll use the split where I have a bass on the bottom and the flute on top. So that's words. But then what I'm hearing is really sounds, and that's important to know. What do you think of that? What about you?
Well, I think
you're too busy to think. You don't have time for that, right?
It depends on the role I'm playing. I think today I'm more of a support role, so I'm really listening to you and trying to then use some sort of counterpoint or play along with, and then maybe create some sort of tension. But
like when you heard me do, whatever it was that I first did, you had some kind of response to that.
Yeah. Thinking sonically immediately, like maybe because that has like kind of a brittle tone, I thought maybe if I used a mallet and a brush instead of the more brittle aspects of the hit, it would provide some sort of counterpoint.
Right.
So you make those decisions quickly because it's like I'd never heard that sound and never heard any of what he's going to do, so I'm just sort of like, well.
Yeah. It sounded great, but so you're thinking of an effective color, like a complementary color, kind of.
Yeah, I mean, we're limited in our scope of rehearsal of talking about it, and also instrumentally, it's just a drum set and a keyboard. So.
Right, which actually I love it, but it's only.
Question. Yeah. You said, well, I didn't think about it because now I see myself in a supporting role, but you were two entities. You're an improvisational percussionist, and you're an improvisational percussionist. Piano is a percussionist.
Okay.
You have a group of synthesized other instruments in there. Could it be that you would start off, because there are sounds in the percussion, that you would start and he would be the supporting?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think
we'll do
that volleys.
We'll do that too.
Could we get a sample of this? I'd love to see what happens. You don't know, really. I just threw the question out. It's a tough thing. I say, you start, let me see what happens. I want to see that way.
Sure.
Let's just take a few more questions. We will do that at some point today for sure.
Well, we sort of, I mean, like the end of that piece was really determined by me.
That's true.
So immediately the volley is taking place that I mean, I was letting him set tempos and feels, but then I sort of directed the dynamic here and there.
And to be fair, when he says in a support role, he just means, because I started that off and I had some.
Right.
I have one word about each piece. When you were talking, Francis, about getting ideas, I have use these two sounds, like that kind of thing. These are 8 different pieces. There's nothing much. But once he starts playing, then it's really an equal role. So, for example, during that first part, I don't remember exactly, but there was something got a little busy, and I started. I kind of went with whatever that was,
Yeah, it was like 6, 8, 12.
Yeah. So once it starts going, it's very much an interaction, absolutely. We'll do something later where he just starts it off, yes.
Yeah, I mean, from this listener's point of view,
when
you talk about, sound was very important from the beginning. Tempo was very important from the beginning. You took the leadership role in the beginning.
Right.
So in the first half of the piece, it seemed there was more response being done by Dave with you taking the leadership. But it's interesting when you can characterize pieces, I think, in different ways. And this was sort of, sound was very important. To the point when Dave got up and he took his drumstick, or one of your drumsticks, and you stood up and you went around the cymbal.
Right.
It seemed to be a direct response to the sound environment you were creating. But then, I mean, you could really see that, like, again, the first half of the piece, you were leading it by sound and tempo, and then sort of midway, Dave began to take over, and it seemed like you were more responding to where he was.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's not that shy, he wouldn't let me boss him around the whole afternoon. He's not very shy.
It's a volley. I mean, it's a volley for sure. That naturally will happen.
And another thing is, but what that brings up too, Francis, is a lot of times it's the whole idea of what is thought, because a lot of times a common question people love to ask improvisers. They say, well, what are you thinking when you're playing?
Yeah.
A lot of instrumentalists will say, well, I'm not thinking anything. And that has created this whole misconception. I can't tell you how many times people come up to me, and I'm talking about professional journalists and writers on jazz, and they go, wow, that's really interesting, you're not thinking anything. I said, no, excuse me, if my fingers are moving, my mind is controlling them. Okay, number one. And we're not talking about blinking, we're not talking about, what do they call that, involuntary activity, you know. I'm choosing to put my fingers in certain places. So obviously I'm thinking. So it's kind of this whole misconception that if you're not thinking verbally, you're not thinking. We're thinking really hard when we're playing. Would you agree with that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I know you were anyway.
Is it tiring? I mean, is it the kind of thinking, you know, where you really, in other words, in analytic thinking, sometimes one has to actually parse out ideas and go, is it exhausting to find it, or is it probably like this?
It is.
It can be. I think it can be. When you're touring, especially if you're improvising over the course of a few weeks, searching for different things almost every night, I think you start to really, the fear of repeating yourself, the fear of relying on your riffs, if you will, or by the time you're done, really a physical exhaustion, or like, you start to maybe turn on yourself because your job is to improvise, and if you're not improvising as much, then you can sort of be a little bit like, you question what you're doing and the validity and the purity of what you're trying to do when you started starts to get a little muddy.
Because you understand what he says, on tour, it means you're playing night after night with the same people.
But you're making different things.
Exactly.
Trying.
Well, what's the difference if you repeat something that you improvised the first time? The second time you're doing it, it's not the same as the first because you can never repeat it exactly the same. And maybe you're using that in counterpoint to something that was different than because you weren't with the same person.
Yeah.
So it's never the same when you're improvising.
Oh, I think there's circumstances where it can be considered, okay, I think what I'm trying maybe think in improvising, even if you're making a record, you start to realize that you've played this piece different so many times, but now the definitive version is about to be made. And then your mind starts to go,
yeah, absolutely.
But it was so good 2 weeks ago in Seattle.
I know.
Should I make that thing happen again in Seattle that I did? And then that's a disaster.
It's true, absolutely.
So you have to fight those impulses to try to recreate things that happen spontaneously, and you have to be able to trust that you'll find something new, and sometimes you don't, and you have to allow yourself the ability to not get there every time.
Absolutely. This is, by the way, the whole world might as well know this, but this is one of Sonny Rollins' problems. Like people say, I mean, he's such a great, amazing musician, big influence on me too. People say, why is he inconsistent? Why are there nights we can't play? And he has said in interviews, if I were to paraphrase what he said what he would say in interviews, what he's really saying is, I feel this pressure to find that, ecstatic moment every time. And I wish, I could just say to him, just drop the pressure. You may find it more easily, but I feel that he actually, that's what actually hangs him up on the nights when he's hung up.
I have a question. I'm really curious, when you play with someone you've never played with before versus people you play with all the time, does it affect your thinking, feeling, playing in the moment in some way? And could you describe that, perhaps?
Well, first of all, we are friendly. We have met before, right? Yeah. So I should mention that. It's not like we don't even know each other. I didn't just pick him up off the street and say, hey, buddy. But, so we are friendly. But it is different for me because, I don't know, would you say it's fair to say, I felt I was learning, even though I've seen you play many times, I felt I was learning about him while I was playing with him. I was kind of learning at the same time.
Yeah, I think there is an initial period, like there's sort of like, even though we might know each other, there's maybe a musical trust that needs to be established over time. And sometimes it can happen right away and you feel like, obviously our goal is to try and make something interesting for you to hear today, and something maybe beautiful or maybe something else that has other elements. So we have a common goal right away. So that helps, because sometimes you can actually be in a position where you're playing with people you don't know, where maybe their goal might be that they want to be.
That's a good point. Yeah.
The thing that makes it great. And today, I mean, I think Louis and I are both trying to be like, let's try and make something okay for everyone, so they didn't waste their time, you know.
Yeah.
So I think that it's like sniffing around at each other, you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, where are you going to go with this? And then maybe I'll try and do this to help it, and you can help me.
But that's a good.
There's a little tentative quality.
Yeah, there is. I think
Yeah.
there is. I think there is. And then with working ensembles, I think that thing where you're just a family out there, and you have those family struggles too that
That's
make their
true,
way into
yeah.
the music, you know.
But it's funny. I mean, it's a very good point, because I have been in situations like this where I didn't feel so simpatico. I felt like, well, I might as well not be here. This person doesn't care what I'm going to play. They're just trying to do what they're going to do. You know, so
that can be very painful.
Yeah, it can be. It can be a real drag. So, all right. Well, we'll take requests today. At least she didn't ask for My Melancholy Baby. We did that too, right?
That too.
What the hell? We're very easy. But let's just do something free. And you'll start, and then I'll come in.
Okay.
I'll let him start any time. I love it. I love it. I'm a pro drummer kind of player. Well, actually, I mention that because not everybody is. You know, there's players that always say, oh, the drummers are too loud. I love it. I love to hear them banging around behind me. Yes, sir?
Louis, when you're improvising, are there times you think it's going wrong?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I would say so. Are there times when it's going wrong? Yeah. But I'll tell you something that I've learned, which is a lot of times when it's going wrong, it's because you're getting too fixed in your idea of where it should be going. And that's fine when you're playing it by yourself. You're playing a solo piano concert or something like that. When you're playing with other people, you really can't be thinking that way. You know. But I have had that happen in the past more often than it happens now, which isn't to say I'm totally cured of it. But in the past, a lot of times I would just have. I'm a very structural player, so I'll find some idea. I changed the sound there, but. And once I find an idea, and it seems to work for both of us, I hope, then I'll start to use it. And when I'm playing, you know, if there were a third musician here, sometimes they won't go with that idea. They'll like be doing totally something else, and I used to just go, you know. So you have to say, all right, fine, then that's where we're going now, you know. So yeah, it's not always, it's risky, this kind of improvising. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting when you say you're a structural player, because what I was wondering, you described what you were doing, at least in some part of it, as creating a melody based upon the rhythms that Dave was playing.
Yes. I mean, I'm not sure, like, when we hear this back or see it back, it'd be interesting, because I'm not, again, I don't remember consciously saying to myself, oh, he's doing that, I'll do this. Or like taking the time, like I wasn't like just kind of sitting listening and you know. But I thought I was doing that.
But that's...
Yeah, I thought I was going
It's sort of the way it comes out.
I thought I was fitting in somehow, you know.
It's sort of the way it comes out, because what happens is you begin to develop a continuity of sounds. You're on a track.
Right.
And at that point it becomes almost more...
See, he smiled, so I figured, all right, you know, either he's more sarcastic than I think he is, or he actually likes it.
I think that
he was smiling because he was thinking, I'm going to murder him.
No.
Or he actually liked it.
I think that the intent that someone has is a very important part of the process. I think that understanding that the intent is to try and do something that makes some sort of sense, and I think that goes a long way with accepting what has happened. I think accepting is easy when accepting that it might not be that happening or might be really cool at any minute is a part of, like, I know that ultimately he's trying to make something good with me, so then we can accept a lot more.
That's a good point, that we have the same common goal.
Yeah, and that's when you don't have that's when it can be this thing very frustrating, like I thought we were sharing this canvas or something.
Right, yeah. Don't make me name names. I can think of somebody right now. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. In this piece, when you started first, as I had suggested...
I thought you ordered it, was the word. I thought you ordered it. Not
no, as I suggested, it might be interesting.
I thought you dictated it.
Did it sound like that?
Just teasing you. Go on. I was just teasing you.
What I was thinking is, now, since he had the ball,
right,
and he started with the stick and the little rock and the...
Yeah, he's very creative. He has all kinds of stuff you don't see drummers with.
So you picked up in the kind of minimalism, and I saw what you did.
Okay.
It was a kind of a little interesting, not John Cagey thing, but a different thing, you know.
Yeah, little bleeps and blops.
Yeah, a little...
Bleeps and blops.
But then...
It's a technical.
I'm saying, do you play the drums?
I love the drums, and I do have a drum set. And I twice have actually done gigs on drums. And I've taken some lessons on drums. But I love a lot of instruments, but I would say the drums is probably, you know, high on my list. You know.
Do you play another instrument? You play the piano? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
Because many times drummers play pianos.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the question I'm going to ask is a little bit out of the realm of this, because we're in the New York psychoanalytic place, and we deal with brain things a lot.
Right.
I mean, Francis Levy is constantly making us think of chemistry and biochemistry, and everything comes from the brain.
That's
I
all
want to know right now, when you're all lucid, you're playing and you're listening to him because you're using your ears. Now, the thinking, sometimes you looked at him and sometimes you didn't.
Right.
Sometimes you were into yourself and your brain waves are moving this way and that way. How much is going on with the breathing and the instruments with the breathing? You have stops and intervals. How much is going on with against the heartbeat, with the brain? I'm giving you a lot of crazy things to think about. I don't know if you'll have an answer, but we come here and talk about a lot of
yeah, I'm sure.
challenging stuff.
Yeah.
So I'm throwing it back to Ben. Is that okay?
Yeah, because I should have warned Dave, and I'm sorry I didn't. During the second hour today, we're going to be hooked up to electrocardiogram.
Yeah, I was wondering if I was breathing.
Is that yeah.
I'm not conscious of that.
I know.
Sometimes I should be more conscious of that. I know what you mean, the spaces.
But you were blinking, I noticed that. But, because I thought you were going somewhere else with that. I thought you were going to say how much of it is visual communication,
Well, yeah,
which is another thing.
Looking at him and watching
Yeah, because sometimes I just really want to listen very hard. I don't want to be distracted visually by all his little toys that he's playing with over there. But we certainly are not I don't think, at least for myself, that I'm thinking about breath. The only time I used to think about breath, another instrument that I have played professionally is the saxophone. You did a lot of gigs on the saxophone for some years. And the saxophone, you have to think about breath because it's just like being a singer. You have to be aware of if you have a long phrase coming up, you have to actually sometimes, especially if it's a written thing, you have to consciously mark where you're going to take a big breath, that kind of thing. On these instruments, obviously, we're locking in somehow to our body rhythms, but I don't, at least for me, not consciously.
Do you have anything that goes against the rhythm of the heart? I mean, you're playing, and I don't know too much about rock and roll or anything like that. All I know is that it's boring. The drummer is boring to me. Okay? I don't know because
Unlike Dave.
No, because
it's fascinating.
I'm an old person and I remember Gene Krupa.
No, you're not.
You know, I know a lot of good drummers and Elton John. So I know some stuff about drumming, and I say to myself, I don't know what that is, and why don't I like it? And I can listen to it, I can appreciate it, I can intellectualize the punk, the metal, and all that stuff, but I don't like the drumming. Is there something that I'm missing? It's not being improvised, it's the same, isn't it?
I think maybe just the general role of the instrument in the other forms of music might be different. Maybe it's not enough, or maybe it's not enough humanity in it, or something. Maybe it's more about just keeping time, or I mean, there can be definitely some interesting stuff happening in all forms. But I know what you're saying.
Yeah.
I mean, I like all kinds of music, so I try to find the intent again on what's going on and judge it.
In every kind of music, there are people who really play well.
I was loving this. Last time you were here, when you had the tabla.
Oh, that was 2 times back. Yeah, sure.
2 times back. I mean, I found, a lot of stuff there, but...
All right, well, let's move on. You want to do that classical thing, my classical idea?
Yep, I mean...
That's all we know about it. It's a classical idea.
That's all you said.
That's all I said, really. Okay. Just a slow classical thing. Well, you'll hear that it's slow, so I don't even have to tell him that.
Right off the bat, though, this type of thing where he says it's a slow classical thing, and I have a drum set,
right?
Immediately I'm swimming upstream.
It's true.
So my mind is now kicked into, I'm the underdog at this point. How am I going to make this with anything for any of you?
Maybe we shouldn't do it.
No, we should. But
I was thinking of that.
That's right away I'm ill-equipped traditionally.
Yeah.
So now then you already have in your mind something when you hear classical music. He's going to play piano. I'm sure he's not, or maybe harpsichord. He's not.
Yeah, I thought I'd take a harpsichord.
He's not going to pull out some weird synthesizer patch. So immediately you've got your idea right away as to what you want to hear, and then I've got this loud drum set. So we'll see what I don't know. Don't hurt me.
I might just look. I might just change it in the middle. I might just change it in the middle just to be more collaborative.
I want.
But my idea, anyway, is to start.
I want that. Yeah.
So that we have something. Because if you have some idea when you're doing free improvisations, if you have some idea to start with, it gives you more possibility that they'll come out sounding different. That's the only reason I like to do that. So.
I'm with you.
My apologies in advance. All right. Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Let me just pick up that last part. How did you know when to end?
He's very strong on endings. He's great on endings. But I've got to tell you something about that. That's a very, Coltrane said something. It's very true in my experience, which is that a strong ending is one of the most important things about having a strong piece. And so many jazz pieces end, just people just kind of peter around. All right, I think it's kind of the end. You think it's the end yet? What do you think? Should we end now? How about this? It's almost the end. And then finally they kind of end. And then after all that, then the drummer goes, and they go, and those have no dramatic impact. So I like that he's a dramatist, because I am too a dramatist. So I'm right in line with that. I love that. I love that. I think strong endings are really a key to a strong piece. There is a classical thing to it, sure. Yeah.
Yeah. He repeated rhythm a few times, and I thought, well, maybe on this third one I'll hit it just a tiny bit harder. He knew just a tiny bit harder. And
Exactly.
Like, okay, there it is.
But see, this is interesting when you ask about what's in my head. All that was in my head for this was, I don't know what was going to happen next, So, no, that's good.
Great.
Keep it open. See, I didn't box him in too much. Did I? You found what to do, right?
Trying.
No, it was great, really. I love it. Yes?
So this ending seemed like more of a surprise to you both, that it just worked and it ended that way, and you sort of came to it together. In the last one, it seemed like David was ending it. He was doing something under the drum, and you picked up on it. Is that correct?
Yeah, we were fading, I think. We both sensed dynamically that it was going out.
That's true. That was more of a fade out ending, not as abrupt. Yeah.
But we could sort of sense, like, maybe because I went to that kind of other texture that is not, you wouldn't immediately associate with this. I think he was innately sensing that we moved in this other texture that's just going to fade away.
And did you think you were trying to end it at that time?
I don't know. I think maybe we started that, and then all of a sudden it sort of felt like the right time.
It's a little bit of this mutuality. It goes back and you kind of go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth.
Again,
but
the intent is to share and to not, is to try and make something right.
But Dave, she said something interesting. She said this ending was a surprise to both of us. Mm-hmm. Is that true?
Well, I think it's a pleasant surprise. I think we agree.
Yes, sir.
I understand that in jazz, any improvising masterpiece, very well known universally, always has a code. For example, something that you were talking about before, that you just got some tunes in there, and it's going to give you, it's like the wheel, take care of the entire piece later.
Okay.
For example, I know a piece, I don't know if you know this piece of Sonny Rollins. The name is Without a Song.
Well, of course we do.
Do you mind if you could play a little bit of that piece?
Well, I don't know that song by heart, but we could play a standard if you want to hear what we call a standard is any popular song like that. And we could do that. Sure. Should we do that? Should we take requests? Maybe we're being too nice.
Oh, you take whatever.
Say, hey man, we don't take requests.
Oh.
No?
I'll take a request.
We should do it?
You decide what you want to do.
We should do it.
You have more.
Okay. We'll do Cherokee. Just swing it.
Okay.
Come on.
Where do you want it?
Not on the harpsichord.
Cherokee on the harpsichord.
1, 2. But that is the most common type of jazz improvisation. But that's not the only kind. Obviously, we made up a couple pieces here today. You know, that's the most common kind, though, is to take a pre-arranged chord sequence, right?
That's right.
Which actually we're going to do. We're going to play a blues.
Okay.
How's that sound?
That sounds good.
Okay. Oops, that's a louder. could have played that for a long, long time.
Very carried away.
A really long time. I have another idea.
You got a question in the back.
Okay. Yes?
Just a quick question. Since you guys are talking about living in a musical moment, spontaneity, and all that stuff, could you talk briefly about maybe how that relates to the music business side of things, working, playing music, making a living playing music?
Oh.
It's kind of like the opposite of spontaneity. Right? What do you think?
That's what managers are for.
Right.
Gosh, that's a difficult relationship. I've never been good at it.
The music business is not so not so spontaneous.
Yeah. Gosh, I don't even know where to start with that, actually, personally. I mean, that's a great question.
Your experiences being spontaneous and when that's worked and then having to go about
You know, I've noticed that you know, if you're an improviser, sometimes you're someone that's willing to commit in a moment, and I think that sometimes that speed can freak out people that are trying to maybe think beyond moments. And I think a lot of people that are involved with the music industry need more explanation than this is a great idea, let's go with it. And
right.
I think that happens a lot of the time, even dealing with people that represent you. They kind of recognize the temperature of someone who's sort of like impulsive
right.
creatively, and they say, okay, let's, and maybe massage the moment to maybe think about it more. I personally have sensed even in myself sometimes getting frustrated with something when you feel your intuition is actually served you well, and then you have to kind of wait around for that to be accepted by everyone. And then you realize that that's not right for me to think that's the way all the time. I've definitely learned to try and find a middle ground. I've never met a really spontaneous, improvisational personality in the music business.
Exactly. Yeah, I would agree with that.
You know?
I would agree with that.
But I mean, that doesn't mean there aren't people that are super passionate and still out there really wanting to bring out creative music.
It's true.
And those people are out there, and you know, I'm thankful to have known a few that seem like they're like, you know, accepting of that temperature. You know,
right.
That's the thing, is to find a way to be able to like accept each other's ability to do. But improvisers are different than, you know, a rock band or classical musicians in many ways, and I think it's definitely mental and spiritual, and everything that goes into that mix is a different personality.
I agree with that, definitely. Yes, sir.
Louis, I have a question. If something really looks great, you know, and you think, my God, I've got it. This is it. This is it. This is you know, and it's even recorded, say. Doesn't that become like almost like have a negative effect? Like one pleasure principle to try to go back to that moment and try to recapture.
Yeah, it can.
Yeah. You mean if you have a recorded version that you really like, you like
well,
it?
You feel it. You know what's happening between you and David. My God, I've got this thing. It's happened. It's like a nice lovemaking. You know? It's happened, and you want to do it the exact. You want it to happen the same path to follow, and you're an improviser.
Yeah. That's again having to really learn that those things can sometimes never reappear, and then you're spending your time. I feel that way with food a lot of the time. I make that equivalent, like, man, I had that Korean place, and then I went back, and then it wasn't good, and then why wasn't it good the second time? It's the same thing. It's the same with music. You can definitely connect, and some people can just not connect right away, and then it just, you know, again, it's this thing where you have to accept.
Right.
We were talking on the way over about a phenomenon that I hear with every improvising musician, is that more often than not, when you think it was good, it wasn't as good as you think. And when you think it wasn't good, it was way better.
That's true.
And so at this point, I welcome the idea of not feeling that it was a great thing. You know, and now I'm in my new place of questioning what I think is good. I mean, it's happened that often that I actually am in that mindset at this point.
We have our own way of critiquing what we do, you know, so we hear, well, we hear it differently, you know.
Yeah.
Wait. Yes, ma'am.
How much are you able to enjoy or experience what you're doing in the moment versus a piece that you've played several times, or you hear it after you've recorded it, you
Right.
develop ideas about it, or you see that there's a flavor to it that you may, I don't know if you miss it while you're playing, or I don't know what's going through your mind about it. How do you
Well,
live
yeah.
it?
There are times when you really, really get into it, you know. We've already had a few of them today.
Yeah.
But to get extended, you know, I say this sometimes at these things that maybe they don't like to hear, but to really get into it, we can't be talking in between, to be honest. You know, it just doesn't work because it's like, you know, you're cooling down. It's like a cooling down period after each piece, you know. So, but we've been getting into it. I mean, in the middle of that last number, I felt I was really getting into it. I hope.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And Dave, of course, he's very, you know, very concentrated, which helps. It helps to be a concentrated, focused musician. You can really get into it. But it's funny. It's a little like what we were talking about before with Sonny Rollins, that getting into it, you kind of have to open yourself to getting into it, but not try to force it. But when you're playing with a cool person that you feel good with, usually it will happen. But to really get into it, you can't be talking in between. And people are always amazed because I'm a teacher and I do this kind of thing. But when I actually am just doing a gig, maybe I'll announce a few of the tunes and that's about it. And even that I don't really want to do it, but I will. Because it actually distracts you. It takes away from that concentration. Were you going to ask me?
I'm really getting into it or putting energy into it. I mean, how do you do that without, like a lot of times getting into it, you're just raising the volume. And how do you put as much energy into it when the volume's low or just for touch?
Well, you sound like you're a piano player. No? I wouldn't say it's necessarily always about the louder means that you're getting into it more.
But that is a dilemma, you know. I mean, you can, let's say you're in a room that's very live like this, where if I compress any more energy, it could maybe get uncomfortable. I don't want that. But if there was an environment where I knew that could happen, that could be expected to happen, you know, I might approach a piece that, with its original intent, like this band I play in the Bad Plus, which has this wild dynamic range. You can play really whisper levels and also get really heavy for a jazz trio. Not like a metal band or anything, but I mean, like, in that world, we have this huge range. And then let's say we're playing somewhere where maybe the sound isn't all the way there. I've felt many times where, like, man, there's certain pieces in the repertoire I can't compress the energy down there that it needs to get the intent of the song. So I think that plays into it, where you have the original intent of the music, volume could be a part of the intensity, and that I'd rather not play the song if I have to compress that volume into this short spurts of whatever. But I mean, that of course then it means we also want to focus the same amount of intent and strong energy into really soft tunes too.
Yeah.
So it's a different, I don't know, does that answer the questions? I suppose that's kind of a strange way of saying that with each situation, you're definitely trying to put everything you have into the softer moments too, but sometimes it's impossible without volume.
Yeah. On a soft piece, you can be very, very moved. You're maybe using the wrong word because you're thinking in terms of excitement. On a soft piece, you can be just as moved, but maybe the word excitement isn't the right word for it. You know? So you may be confusing things. Yes, ma'am.
I'm curious about when you're playing with groups, say 4 people you don't know, or sometimes another time when you come in with a quartet that you do know. How inhibiting or uninhibiting is it to have a conductor? One of the group gives the down, or whatever. I was reading Miles Davis's book, and you know, he had a human personality, was brilliant and all of that, but there was a lot of arguing about how long he played or what he did. It didn't come in right. I mean, they're improvising. You can't put it in a bag. It's feeling. It's.
Well, I don't know. For me,
does the conductor
I've done a lot of work as a side person in other people's bands. And I'm cool with that. You know, they want it this way, they want it that way. I will say this, though, as far as getting into it, it can be a little hard to get into it when you're really in just a role of, okay, this is what you want. Oh, wait, was that it? Is this it? kind of a thing, it can be a little harder to get into it. But, you know, I feel there's always something to learn, too. I mean, it's like there's a kind of a discipline you learn from that. I don't mind it somewhat. These other, by the way, most of the other ones that I did here were like that. Like Don Byron brought his own tunes and said, I want you to learn these before. Jane Ivy Bloom gave me a few tunes to learn. So, you know, a lot of those I was in that situation. One thing I'm enjoying about today is ain't nobody telling me what to do. I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's peculiar that you mentioned Miles Davis because, I mean, I think Miles Davis was obviously a great trumpet player, but I think the thing about Miles Davis is that he was a great band leader.
Absolutely.
And that's actually where his greatest gift was, is the idea of putting people together that he thought would create a certain vibe, and then sort of silently directing the energy. And I think that it depends, just like anyone, if it's not a good pianist, the music isn't. So if the leader, if someone is up there and you don't get a sense that they are on a high level as a leader, number one, as a personality, a type A, whatever, or someone who really corrals people and tries to pull the best out of them. I've been in painful situations where people seem like they're amateur conductors and leaders, and that just brings about pretty not spectacular music.
Right.
And so when I recognize someone actually has an idea and they're not so much controlling everything as they're directing the flow naturally, then you can then I feel much more like I'm at the whim, sort of, but at the same time they see the strength of letting me contribute. I think that's what Miles Davis did. He never said, you know, he got all these kind of iconoclastic people together. It was never like sheep. It was always these super strong personalities, and then he'd just sort of be the strongest personality of all of them. And I just think that was really one of it's not as talked about as the great leaders in improvised music. Is a different thing than the great conductors of the great orchestras.
That's a good point. There's a real art to that. Yes, sir.
I just want to raise the question of improvisation in Latin music. The drummer is really like an instrument.
Yeah.
Well, the drum is always an instrument, but you mean it's a key. It's a key.
I know what you mean. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
Improvising in a very structured way.
Yeah, certainly structured.
I wonder whether there's much room for improvisation, both for the drummer and for the pianist, in that kind of music.
In Latin music.
Very different from that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, technically, Latin music might come from a place, if you're looking at it harmonically, something that's a little bit more, the term isn't simple, but more condensed into more of a pentatonic or harmonic minor. Not something that deals with different chord changes or key changes, or as much as it's dealing with rhythmic feels and like more folkloric melodies.
Right. Simple
melodies, but very complicated rhythmic relationships. That's what you mean about the drums being a forefront, become more melodic. Actually, there's much less improvising, as much as there are very traditional patterns that are based in like traditions, both religiously, you know, celebratory. Yeah. And so I think that the piano, being another percussion instrument, especially in Latin music, is playing a role much like the melodic elements of the drums in Latin music. There's so many congas tuned, the drums are tuned different ways. You really hear the melodic element just like in African music, where the drum is actually the center of the music. And in Eurocentric music, of course, it's more of the color instrument in classical music or whatever. But the idea is, yeah, I mean, I think there is room for at least the drum to be the real focus in that music, and that's also a lot of fun. But you know, people have taken those prototypes of those rhythms and made ways to improvise on them in jazz. Of course, there's a huge history of Latin jazz, you know. Whereas not playing, I wouldn't consider myself a great traditional clave player, but I have actually played a lot of Latin jazz because I feel like, well, I'm an improviser, I'm an American musician, that's my tradition.
Right.
So then I can take American art is like taking whatever you can from your American experience and turning it into your own. So I think jazz has done that in a way that makes you improvise differently when you're thinking about Latin jazz.
Absolutely.
The drums all of a sudden are like this almost macho in that Latin music, you know what I mean? Almost like getting up there and like, now it's my turn.
Right. So you're right. I mean, he's giving a lot of details. Whenever you have a group of drummers together, like in a Latin group or in a traditional African group, they tend to have more circumscribed roles because they have to lock in with each other. I learned that when I was about 22, and I was in Berkeley, California, and there were some guys playing conga drums, and I said, hey man, I don't remember how I ended up sitting at one of the drums. I think somebody said, hey man, you want to try it? And I just kind of went, boopy doopy doopy doopy, you know. I said, no, that's not it. And I said, it? There's an it that it has to be? I thought you just kind of do your thing, and it wasn't like that at all. I had to lock in with the other rhythms a certain way, you know.
And in Latin jazz, you know, where you might be dealing with just a drum set version of those rhythms, you're then thinking that the original feel of that music came from maybe 4 people playing different percussion instruments. So you're almost thinking of your 4 limbs as 4 different people.
Yeah.
So then each limb is sort of in a different time space, just slightly. You actually try to, not try self-consciously to manufacture that, but you sort of have that idea that the rhythm needs to feel a certain way. So you try to all of a sudden become 4 people. It's a very interesting way of thinking of applying the traditions into jazz, whereas you got this clave rhythm, and then all of a sudden it's 1 person instead of 4. You got to kind of like think about how that's got to feel in order to have some sort of authenticity.
Exactly. Drummers talk about independence. They listen to other drummers that he or she really has great independence. What they mean is independence of the limbs. You know. Here's a rhythm for you. How's that for a little segue?
Oh, this is that ping pong thing you're talking about?
No, I could change the tempo.
That's fine.
It's kind of faster.
too crazy?
No, good.
All right.
It's wild.
You're real aggressive with that.
What's that?
I said that you were real aggressive. You were
Aggressive?
real aggressive.
Yeah.
It's a lot of notes.
It's a lot of notes.
When you just press your fingers on it and had a
This has what you call an arpeggio feature.
I
This,
mean, that, you set the Yamaha up to
it has what's called an arpeggio feature. So that means if you play 3 notes, it'll go between them. And you can change the way it goes between them. Same 3 notes, changes the octaves. Goes way up.
You could actually bring in a flute, you could bring another instrument on you, right?
Yeah, you can. You can do a lot of craziness, which I enjoy.
Yeah, sounds great.
But as we were talking in the car before, I also like a Steinway Grand, which I have at home. You know, I love a piano, but this is fun too. I love it. You know, there's a lot of things you can do with this. I enjoy it. Yes, sir.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like when you go into time, you tend to go 4/4. Is there a reason for that?
No, we were going to some kind of we were doing like cross rhythms over 4, but there's a lot of 4. But for example, in Happy Apple, his trio that I highly recommend that you buy all of their CDs immediately. They do a lot of things in 5/7/9/11, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think when you're jamming per se, or like trying to find something, I think that oftentimes you'd maybe go to the music that you know, if we were in Turkey, you know, we'd probably be playing in 7, you know what I mean? It's more like this
That's
is the,
true, yeah.
This is the common language is 4, and maybe polyrhythms that deal within 4. But we can play in odd time signatures, but it would sort of have to be like decided on. All of a sudden, maybe he starts playing a vamp that's in an odd time. I would then know. Or like this thing that he was just doing was wide open. Actually, it was like 16th notes.
4 all the time.
Yeah, it was in 4, but then the 16th notes might trip over each other, and then all of a sudden it restarts.
It really wasn't just like a
yeah, there wasn't
4.
like a way to play. I actually attempted at times, though, to even play lock with it on some sort of Latin rhythm, you know, some sort of.
Yeah, you could. You could do that with it.
Just to use that, show that tool, you know.
I mean, I like that ping pong thing because you can play with the meter. So, for example, what most people do is they just go like, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. But I purposely hold down odd numbers of notes because it'll force it to go into different meters. So what is that? That's like 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It kind of forces it to do different things.
Still good 4.
That's still 4. You know what you have to do? You have to change. You have to go to that other arpeggio that I was using before. Because that's the other thing, is depending on the arpeggio, you'll get a different meter too. So this one, for example, let's see.
Yep.
That's got kind of a 3 thing going. So you get some 3s going on there, yeah. And then sometimes I like to just do this. And then hold down the pedal.
What happens there is it like collapse on itself?
Yeah. They kind of, when you hold down the pedal, it just blurs. It kind of, It sustains them all, so you get this blur, you know. So I like doing little tricks with that, you know. All right.
What's your favorite choice?
Oh. Well, I mean, I take these away from my kids as soon as they get them.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, they're coming with me.
Not until they're done with them, though, right?
Oh, no.
You're not that mean. Because you're not that mean, right?
No.
But what about, here, let's ask him this. Where did you get the name for your trio, Happy Apple?
Oh, that's a name of a Fisher-Price little apple. I think these things, I don't know, they relax me.
Yeah, that's good. I love it. I love it. It's a Happy Apple. That's the name of the toy. We have one more number. Yes, ma'am.
Some percussionists have certain ways of playing, like with like British shuffle or something, which has, I don't know, certain 8s and 16s and just all kinds of that he's famous for. Do people incorporate that into their music, or do you seem to create your own particular?
Not everybody's as flexible as Dave. So you just have to know who you're playing with. There's certain people, that's what they're going to do. And you just have to know that's what they do. And I know a lot of musicians that when you say play free, I just set this up for a different sound. I don't know if I can do this, but when you say play free, the idea of playing free is, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. You know, that's all they know. So you have to know who you're playing with. You know, Dave, he can more or less go anywhere. So
I know. I know what you mean. Though. I mean, there's some people that are just known for, or like if you use the idea of a shuffle or something like that in your music, you're thinking that. I mean, I know there are people that, just like Louis was saying, that are known for doing something so well that that's what they do now. Yeah, and then they're used for that thing. It's kind of like, I think, with actors getting typecast. You know,
yeah.
Al Pacino yells really loud. So
right.
let's give him something to yell about.
You had another one?
Yeah. Is there anywhere that each of you can almost consistently find inspiration for this? Or is it just a momentary?
You mean people that we listen to?
Anything.
To find inspiration for improvising?
Is that what you mean? Just where do your ideas come from, kind of?
I've known many improvisers thinking cinematically a lot of the time, or visual arts or whatever. You find that they somehow, I don't know much about the analysis of that subject, but I know that a lot of musicians are more inspired by visual art than they are.
That's true. Yeah.
By sound, and vice versa. Painters always have music going. A lot of the ones that I know.
That's true.
I think I'm that way too. I think that, you know, even getting out of the elevator, and the first thing I see is that giant painting, and it was kind of powerful for a second. Like, and I don't know if that made its way into, you know, thinking about.
I told you not to play that.
But you know, I think maybe that finds its way in as an improviser, is like different feelings you might have from seeing things or visualizing. Sometimes with instrumental music, if you have to come up with a title, sometimes it can be this abstract thing that you were thinking, or some story that you think that this sounds like, and vice versa.
Yeah. I mean, for me, I can't say that I do respond that much to visual things, although I have worked in visual situations. I've worked with dancers, and I work with a video artist. In fact, we're performing next Friday. This Friday. And we were rehearsing the other day, and he said, can you give me something to go with this? And I played something, whatever. Maybe I'll just switch the sound. You know, so I don't know what I came up with, but he said, can you give me something to go with that? And let's say I played, you know, sorry. He said, give me something else. And I played like, he said, give me something else. And I went. And so this is funny. It's like, he asked it in a very academic way. I laughed inside, but I didn't want to make fun of him because he's a very nice guy and he's a good video. He said, what's your compositional process? What he meant was, how are you covered up with all these crazy ideas off the top of your head? And my answer was, I'm just full of ideas all the time, and that's really what it is. But I will, and of course Dave is too. But I will say this, that I listened to music since I was probably 8. I mean, I was going to say hours a day. There aren't always hours a day to do it, but at least an hour a day. And there were many times in my youth that I listened 2, 3, 4. After school, I'd do my homework and then listen to music for hours. And all kinds of music. And I know, even though musicians are always listening to music, I know because I teach, I know a lot of musicians, that I've heard a lot more music than a lot of musicians that I know. So all that is bubbling in there somewhere, you know. So he said, what's your compositional process?
Yeah, I mean, it's a language just like anything if you're around it. I know that my children, and I've never talked about them being musicians, but they've just, all of a sudden I started realizing that there's music on almost all the time. That's just completely normal way to live, and then they'll have a friend come over. And it'll be like, what is this music? Maybe all they've heard is like cartoon music or like children's music, and they're almost scared.
Interesting.
Some music, you know, all of a sudden, like, Ornette Coleman's been blaring in the car since my kids are like 1, you know, and it's just completely normal. The kid gets in the car, they're just like, what are you doing?
That's great, I love it.
And so who knows what that's, you know, that inspiration, like, we definitely listen to so much music.
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
And eclectic, we're both interested in a lot
yeah,
of
and so it's
kinds.
just sort of like makes its way in somehow, osmosis, whatever. Just like any language being around it, you'll speak it sooner or later.
Absolutely. A lot of times people ask me, who have young kids, they say, how should I get my kids into music? I say, have music playing all the time and have some instruments lying around. That's all you need to do. But you do need to do that. Yes, sir?
Do you ever find that the conscious mind jumps into an improv and this lexicon of musicians that you have at your disposal and say that this was too monkish and I have to go off in another direction?
Yes, it does. Yeah.
And do you think that is inhibiting the improv, or is actually adding to it at the point where all of a sudden you're like, I got to go this way?
I think it's situational. I think it's can be great and can be bad. There's no way to put a temperature on.
Sometimes it's an inspiration. You go, oh, I just have an idea, you know. But when words do come in, like while I'm playing before, you know, the word Bach popped in my head when I did that classical thing. You know, I was thinking, all of a sudden I was thinking Bach, you know. Not a particular piece, but kind of an idea. But then we went in a different direction, you know. So, you know, occasionally something like that will pop into your mind, and you can go there or not go there, and it can be great, or it could not be great, you know.
When I first started performing improvising gigs or whatever, I actually had I made a little card for myself, laminated, that I kept in my stick bag that I would look at right before I start, and just had some words on there that, because I would find like sometimes I would not be able to like remember even who I was as a musician when I started playing all of a sudden. Like it wasn't like an agenda, but it was definitely to remind me of certain things that I knew how to do. You know what I mean? Like,
that's great.
Collecting your thoughts for a second.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean.
Almost like, you know, a boxer. Yeah. I mean, they're not learning how to box right before they go out in the ring, but someone's looking at them and going, "No, you got to do this now."
Right.
They're like, "Yes, I got to do that now." It's the same thing. You're going into this chaotic situation. It's nice to have a few words of encouragement on. I can't remember what they were either.
That's interesting. They weren't like things to play.
But I mean, you said even like, you said the word monk there, and all of a sudden it's like, anyone who knows anything about jazz, there's this absolute understanding of what you're talking about. I could have the word monk, I could have the word monk, and it could mean something like being an individual, being iconoclastic, remember who you are. You don't have to, you know what I mean? I could use those words at the last second and remind myself and go, oh yeah,
that's
take a
great.
deep breath and do it.
That's great. All right, we have time for one more number. Now let me just say, let's see if this is good. Ooh, we don't want drums. I thought I had it off.
You can have that, I don't care.
Why is that playing?
Want to do that?
No, I don't want this. You're going to kill me. Why is that on? Let me just see. First slider. love it. Thank you. David King. I could play that one for a couple of hours. David King. Thank you. Yeah. And my next event here is December 20th with Bella Flack.
Further information about our programs and a complete archive of past Philip Tady's events is available at philiptadys.org.